Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. A lot of animated comedies have tried to go for the kind of kid logic type of humor, to have that kind of crazy, kind of whimsical, kind of kid nature to it, almost Warner Brothers-y type of style, or like Calvin and Hobbes' endless imagination in terms of jokes and kid humor. And most of the time I haven't really liked those movies, particularly Boss Baby and Storks, where it's like they try to do the comedy thing. It doesn't work as well as something like Lego Batman or the Lego Movie, frankly. I always think it's a nice idea, they can just never commit to it. And Captain Underpants commits to it so fully, you're just fully in kid logic mode the entire time. It has an endless stream of energy throughout it. It really moves very quickly. It's not a very long movie, but it very much moves and bounces off the screen. I think if you're a kid, if you're a 7-year-old, this would be an amazing movie to watch because it gets that kind of humor. This felt like a 7-year-old's imagination put on the screen with the kind of boundless energy that you kind of remember it as. Both has the sensibility of a children's book that's trying to imitate how kids think and the energy you imagine you had as a child, and also actually having the energy of a child throughout it. And I think that's really what made this film so much fun. I see a lot of animated films, and most ones that veer towards the comedy angle appeal to 7-year-olds, but after you go past 7 and you grow up, you realize it's not a great movie. Captain Underpants is actually a pretty good movie. It's able to use a lot of different animation styles, have fun with the superhero genre. It's able to be a fun, silly kind of cartoon. It's able to have a different kind of character design matching its source material. It's kind of really what you want from a CG animated adaptation, and not adhering to like all the kind of things that they need to be a big budget CG studio film like most of them do. Captain Underpants is just a Captain Underpants movie, and it's very, very good at that. Two kids in Ohio, George Beard and Harold Hutchins, played by Kevin Hart and Thomas Middleditch, were two 4th grade friends who live next door to each other and create comic books about a character called Captain Underpants. They make tons of comic books, and they're kind of the class clowns as well. They're multi-talented, I guess. And they go to a school where they have a Principal Krupp, voiced by Ed Helms, and he is making their life hell. He keeps trying to catch them, and when he does catch them, he separates them into different classes, which of course will end their friendship, which is partly what he intends to do and partly what they think will happen, which is very, melodramatic in a kid's sense, until they find their hypno ring and hypnotize the principal to think that he is actually, in fact, their comic book character, Captain Underpants, and he goes around trying to save the day, doing all sorts of ridiculous things, and suddenly they have control over their principal, and as a supervillain played by Nick Kroll gets involved, Professor P or Professor Poopy Pants, they have to find a way to defeat the evil professor and use their new superhero principal to help them get out of this mess. I've never really read a Captain Underpants book. They kind of happened after I was a kid, so I wasn't really the target demographic. This isn't a review where I'm going to talk about how, oh, it's like that and it encapsulates the style and things. I can't really see that, but from my rough understanding of Captain Underpants, or the time I called Nolan and said, what's up with Captain Underpants, which is true. I mean, we talked about other things, but that I did ask him because I don't know. Captain Underpants, from what I understand from at least passing by the books at Barnes & Noble's while I use their bathroom, this looks like it uses the style of the books, and it kind of reminds me sort of what happened with the Peanuts movie, where that incorporated the Charles Schultz style into CG. And I think that's one thing that really bogs down big budget CG films, is you kind of have this Pixar DreamWorks face thing, and it's getting a little boring, and you're kind of wanting like a different character design for once. And both this and the Peanuts movie are able to have a lot more fun with what CG can do. I sort of wonder why they keep reusing the same character designs when they don't really have to. It has so much fun with the style. There's such a free willingness to this that I don't see from a lot of CG films. They're kind of like stagmented in being a particular film and being a particular character design and all that stuff. And this film has a free flowingness to it that it has in its different character design, but also like suddenly it'll cut to sock puppets, or it'll cut to a different style of animation, or it'll cut to Flip-O-Matic, which I think apparently is a reference to the books. I didn't know. But that was funny, and it had a sense of fun to it through the animation, which I think is really cool. And you could just say, oh, it's a lark kind of movie for 7-year-olds and fine, whatever, but I think the animation has real inventiveness to it. It's something that I don't see other than like, this is probably best comparable to like the Lego movies or something like that. And what I love about that kind of character design is it kind of feeds into the energy of it. You can't stop the energy of Captain Underpants in this movie, because it's just all throughout it. You know, having that kind of 7-year-old elementary school, let's play in the playground after school kind of energy is so within this film. It's like nothing but that almost, but it's so glorious about it. One of the things about Boss Baby and Storks is they care more about this plot about corporations and stuff, which is like not interesting and doesn't honestly work that well. But a Captain Underpants has kid logic to it. You have the whole thing of like they're going to be separated, which apparently is different from how the books do it, but it works within the kid logic so well it didn't feel like a problem. Like they're going to be separated. That is a big deal for a kid. Although when I was a kid, most of my friends weren't in my classes, so for me it was like, I mean, just wait later, but that does sort of suck. So I think you would probably take it that far. I mean, you wouldn't hypnotize your principal. You'd think of that kind of a logic, and this inhabits that so well, and flipping between different kind of storytelling things and like having like the dolphin joke keep coming up and things like that, I think really gives this film a real spirit and energy to it that I found really inviting. I kind of was just seeing this because I see almost every DreamWorks film, and I was like, all right, cool, let's just do this. I ended up being a sort of a fan of this film. I was like, I will totally watch this film with my daughter when she's older because it's just so much fun in it. And, you know, and I like fun kids films. You know, we don't always have every laugh have a cry. We can just have laughs sometimes. This was written by Nick Stoller, who also did write Storks, but is more known probably for his comedies that he directed, like Neighbors, Get Him to the Greek, and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and the 5-Year Engagement. Anybody remember that? And also he helped write the Muppets movies, the last two, Muppets and Muppets Most Wanted. The things that really works about this, and I understand when people first heard of a celebrity cast, they were against it, and I would be too, especially after seeing what the Peanuts movie did with the kids' voices in that, and I think it really worked for the style of that film. And this is sort of comparable to the Peanuts movie. I think I might like the Peanuts movie more, but it's sort of like a close race, to be honest. But the choice of actors, at first, I was like, oh, celebrities, you're having Kevin Hart and Thomas Middleditch. That's not exactly like that interesting to have celebrity voices in an animated film. And they play off each other so well. Honestly, so well, I would see a movie with Kevin Hart and Thomas Middleditch, like a live action movie. They had such great chemistry together. It's ridiculous. But having two trained comedic actors, which both those guys really are, really helped the flow of this film better than I think having like an untrained child actor would. Having these comedic actors, you have Ed Helms, you have Thomas Middleditch, you have Kevin Hart, you have Nick Kroll, and then you have Jordan Peele as one of the other characters, didn't even realize it was him, Kristen Schaal as the lunch lady. I mean, it's like these are like comedy all-stars of our age doing the Captain Underpants movie. The reason Looney Tunes worked so well is you had Mel Blanc. I don't think I need to tell you what a legend Mel Blanc was. And these people, certainly maybe they won't ever be Mel Blanc, but they're really good. The chemistry between Thomas Middleditch and Kevin Hart really is the glue that puts this film together. It works in that cartoony style. Most of the time when you're seeing cartoons and it's a kid, it's not a kid voice, but this is a time that I thought it worked very well, and I thought it was a good decision overall. Barely noticed it was Ed Helms through most of it, and Nick Kroll has become like an animated movie all-star between Sausage Party and Sing, and I think he does a great performance as the bad guy. He's almost having like way too much fun. I know he's very known for doing impressions. That works so well within an animated film. I think it works really well within this. DreamWorks is really good at doing kind of colorful stuff, and I think the colorfulness in this, I didn't see this in 3D, and there were a couple shots that made me wish I did. And in the How to Train Your Dragon films, they used 3D incredibly effectively, and they used it so naturally in this in some shots between like the deepness of the canvas in this film. It might look like more of a basic kind of a sketchier style, and it's done that way by design because it's made by 2 4th graders, but they had a lot of fun with that and with the colors and with the animation. And it kind of shows what works about DreamWorks. When you see something like Trolls or Boss Baby and you kind of complain about them being a dumb corporate studio, which I do quite a bit, but then they make stuff like this or the How to Train Your Dragon movies or Rise of the Guardians or something, and you're like, oh man, there's like some artistry going on there. Captain Underpants kind of highlights what DreamWorks could be. It's definitely a big IP, a big franchise kind of a movie. Definitely something, you know, DreamWorks would like to do. They like to make hits, but it also kind of has an interesting artistry that works naturally kind of within the aesthetic of this kind of a character. I really like the Captain Underpants movie. I wasn't expecting that much because I have like virtually no attachment to this character, nostalgic or otherwise, but it's really, really fun. I don't think you'll be disappointed by it. Even if you're just being dragged to it by a bunch of kids, you'll still go like, hey, that was like a lot of fun. And it's because you had some really comedy heavyweights working on between Nick Stoller and the voice cast, but as well as like they just really nailed the kind of kid humor kind of movie that I've wanted through Boss Baby and Storks. Crazy, bouncing off the walls energy, Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, kind of 90s energy that made you feel like they're speaking your kind of a kid language. Captain Underpants really feels that way. Nails it so well, it's like what those films dream they could be in their kind of whimsical, weird style. Captain Underpants just is. It does all the silly kid humor. The bad guys call it Professor Poopy Pants. They're not even trying to do anything else, but I don't want them to do anything else. I kind of love that this film wasn't trying to be a big CG animated film. It was just trying to be a big Captain Underpants movie, and that's honestly as much as I wanted from it, and it delivered so well. I was surprised what it gave to me. It's very much giving you kind of almost the perfect kind of a film for this, or at least it feels that way for me as someone who's never read the books, but it feels like almost perfect for this kind of a character and this kind of an energy. And DreamWorks managed to actually make a really fun animated comedy for once that didn't get on my nerves almost immediately. It's the kind of film that's both funny, silly, will have kids laughing, and won't really insult your intelligence, while also making a bunch of jokes about farts and having a bad guy named Professor Poopy Pants. It's kind of the miracle of a kids movie. It's very much the soul of a kids movie, but is insanely enjoyable and has a crazy energy to it and doesn't honestly feel that long because it isn't, and plays just as fun as it ever should be. So if you have seen Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.